Single mom. Read at the library, not knowing the listener was a CEO. The late Tuesday sunlight slanted through the high windows of Willow Creek Public Library, warming the small children's reading corner with a honey gold glow. Dust floated like tiny drifting stars in the air. Outside, leaves rustled gently against the glass, but inside, everything felt quiet enough that even a whispered page turn sounded tender. It was Ella Morris's favorite moment of the day, the soft hour between her first shift and her overnight cleaning job, when the world finally slowed down enough for her to breathe. Ella, 29, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and settled onto the carpeted bench. She pulled her faded denim jacket tighter around herself, not because it was cold, but because somehow the pressure over her ribs kept her steady after long days on her feet. Her son Aiden, 6 years old and small for his age, leaned his head against her shoulder, still smelling faintly of crayons and the cafeteria applesauce he loved. He clutched his little stuffed fox, its fur worn flat from years of being dragged along to every place she worked. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" she asked. Her voice carried the kind of warmth that only tired mothers seem to master, thin around the edges, but soft like fabric washed too many times. "Mum." Aiden nodded and curled closer. A few other kids shuffled in, 2 siblings still wearing their backpacks, another little girl hugging her knees, waiting for the story to begin. Ella always read here after work, partly for Aiden, partly for the neighborhood kids whose parents were still finishing their shifts, and partly because reading aloud felt like the one thing in life she could give freely. A story didn't cost anything. A story made the room feel bigger. She opened the picture book on her lap, smoothing the pages with gentle practice strokes. Her thumb brushed over a crease that someone else's child must have made long ago, and she imagined the dozens of families who had touched this book before her. "All right," she said softly, letting her breath settle. "Let's start." The children leaned in. Her voice, steady but delicate, began weaving the world of the book, a small fox looking for a safe place to sleep. Aiden lifted his head a little, his eyes bright. He loved fox stories. As Ella read, her exhaustion faded. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed faintly, but the late sunlight, glowing gold as it slipped lower, wrapped around her like a quiet blessing. She kept turning pages, her fingers gliding over each illustration. She shifted the book slightly so the girl across from her could see better. One of the brothers scooted closer, whispering, "Miss Ella, can you show the picture again?" She did, smiling. Moments like this made every other part of her life overdue rent. Mounting bills, double shifts that left her legs throbbing feel a little more bearable. She reached the middle of the book, where the fox's den was destroyed in a storm, leaving the animal wandering alone, looking for somewhere to stay. The words caught in her throat. Just for a second. The children didn't notice, but someone else did. At the far end of the hallway leading into the reading corner, a man had stopped walking. His figure was tall, half silhouetted by the backlight of the windows along the corridor. Ella didn't see him yet. Her eyes stayed on the book, but his presence shifted the air, like an almost imperceptible change in temperature. His posture wasn't casual. It was attentive. Still, as if something about her voice, low, careful, a bit shaky, had anchored his feet to the spot. Ella inhaled quietly and kept reading. The little fox wandered, unsure where he belonged. Her voice trembled again. The line hit harder than she expected. She pressed her fingertips against the page to steady herself. Rent was due on Friday. She had exactly $32 in her checking account. And the fox, this tiny illustrated fox, was suddenly too close to home. Her next breath wavered. Aiden looked up, sensing something in her tone, but she forced a small smile and continued. The shadow in the hallway shifted slightly, the man leaning forward just a little, as though trying to catch the next note in her voice. Ella didn't know he was there. Not yet. She only felt the familiar ache tighten in her chest as she read the sentence again, softer this time. All he wanted was a safe place to rest. The late sunlight dimmed, turning more amber, and for a moment, The library felt suspended, Ella reading, children listening, and far in the corridor, an unseen witness quietly drawn toward her voice. The world outside kept moving, but here, in the warm, glowing corner of Willow Creek Library, something small and fragile had begun to shift. The last sentence of the story drifted away like a soft breath, and the children slowly uncurled from their listening stillness. Aiden tugged gently on his mother's sleeve, asking if they could borrow the book again next week. Ella nodded, closing it carefully, her fingers lingering on the worn cover. She didn't notice that as she stood, one of the books stacked on the bench slipped from her other arm and thudded softly onto the carpeted floor. But someone else noticed. From the end of the hallway, the same spot where a tall silhouette had stood moments earlier, the man began to walk toward them. His steps were unhurried, almost hesitant, as though he didn't want to interrupt the gentle spell she had woven in the children's corner. When he reached them, the dying sunlight framed him in amber. Tall, broad-shouldered, with neatly combed brown hair and a quiet presence that didn't need announcing. He lowered himself slightly and picked up the fallen book, brushing the dust from its cover. As he rose, Ella turned and gasped softly, startled by how close he was. Their fingers grazed as he handed the book back, just a light, unsure touch, and both of them paused, a tiny, awkward beat suspended between them. "You dropped this," he said. His voice was warm, steady, but gentle, as if he didn't want to startle anyone. Ella offered a small, embarrassed smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I didn't even notice." For a moment, neither seemed to know what to say. Then Aiden, ever unaware of adult hesitations, stepped forward with his stuffed fox bouncing at his side. "Chiko thich enghandi sho gc kang?" he asked brightly, switching back to English halfway through without noticing. "Did you like my mom's story?" Ella felt her cheeks warm. "Aiden, honey." The man chuckled quietly, crouching slightly to meet the boy's eyes. "Yes," he said. "Very much." When he straightened, his gaze returned to Ella, not sharply, not intensely, but softly focused, as if he had been listening long before she knew he was there. "I'm Liam," he offered. "I come here sometimes to look for materials for a project involving education." He left it there. No title, no details, nothing flashy. Ella nodded politely, assuming he was a teacher or maybe a graduate student. Something about the way he spoke made him seem used to leaving things unsaid. She tucked a book into her tote bag and adjusted the strap across her shoulder. The sun had dipped lower, turning the floor into long stripes of warm color. Liam stepped aside so she and the children could move more comfortably, but he didn't leave. Something in his expression said he genuinely wanted to talk, not out of politeness, but out of something quieter curiosity. Interest? Ella wasn't sure. He broke the silence with a gentle question. "Do you read here every week?" "Usually," she said. "It's free, it's quiet. And Aiden likes it." She hesitated, then added almost apologetically, "I work 2 jobs, so this is our calm time." Liam didn't shift the way some people did when hearing that. No pitying tilt of the head, no uncomfortable smile. Just a thoughtful stillness. "That must be a lot to carry," he said. Something softened in her shoulders. Maybe it was the way he said it, not dramatic, not intrusive, just honest. "It can be," she murmured. "Aiden gets stressed at school. They call me from the health office more times than I can count. And we might have to leave our apartment next month if rent goes up again." Saying it aloud made her chest tighten, but Liam didn't look away. He listened with both attention and patience, as if making space for her words to land. "How does he handle all that?" he asked quietly. Ella looked down at her son, who was now pretending his fox could fly. "He tries so hard," she said. "More than a kid his age should have to." Liam followed her gaze, and that was when he noticed the tear in Aiden's backpack. A long fraying rip along the side seam, held together by a safety pin. His expression changed, subtle, barely perceptible, but real, a flicker of sadness, recognition, and something else. Something deeper lodged behind his eyes. almost like a memory. Ella didn't see his reaction. She was busy gathering the children's things. But Liam's gaze lingered on the rip in that backpack as if it meant something he understood all too well. And in the golden quiet of the library, a connection, small, fragile, but unmistakable, began to take shape between them. The next afternoon arrived wrapped in a gray, low-hanging sky. By the time Ella walked Aiden to Willow Creek Library, the rain had already begun, a slow, steady drizzle that blurred the windows of passing cars and left thin streams sliding down the bus shelter glass. Aiden hopped around every puddle he could find, but Ella's steps were slower. Her body still ached from the extra shift she had taken the night before, and part of her hoped, without admitting it, that the quiet man from yesterday might appear again, standing at the end of the hallway with that gentle, listening expression. But when she guided Aiden into the children's corner, wiping the water off his hair with her sleeve, the space was nearly empty. The hum of the building felt deeper, colder. No tall silhouette leaned against the hallway entrance. No soft footstep approached to pick up a fallen book. Just silence, the kind that made even her breath sound loud. She tried not to be disappointed. It was silly. She barely knew him. And yet, as she arranged the cushions on the carpet and helped the children settle into their usual circle, she found herself looking over her shoulder more than once. Nothing. The floor was damp from rain dragged in on shoes, and the fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, making the room feel narrower than usual. She opened the book, a different one today, about a wandering bird searching for its flock, and forced her voice into the steady warmth she always used. But the quiet hit her harder than she expected. Without the gentle presence she had grown oddly comfortable with after just one conversation, the room felt hollow in a way she couldn't name. Her voice filled the space anyway. She read slowly, turning each page with familiar care. Aiden rested his cheek on her knee, his breathing soft and rhythmic, and she kept going until the last line drifted into the stillness. When the small cluster of kids dispersed, Ella slipped the book into the return slot and gathered her bag. Rain pounded harder now, drumming against the big front windows like an impatient hand. She tightened her jacket around Aiden and walked toward the exit, her shoes squeaking faintly on the damp floor. She almost didn't notice the poster at first, just a large blue display near the entrance, half hidden by a rack of brochures. But something about the color caught her eye. Maybe it was the word education printed in bold white letters. Maybe it was the feeling that had followed her all afternoon, a quiet tug she couldn't shake. She stepped closer. Aiden tugged her hand, but she barely felt it. The poster showed a group of children gathered around a reading circle, much like the one she held every afternoon. Above them, in clean, striking type, Heartwarming Fund, education for every child. She blinked, confused. She had heard of the Hartwell Corporation, everyone had, but she didn't know they had a fund for children. Her eyes traced the text downward. Programs for low-income families, school support, literacy projects, community reading grants. And then she froze. There, printed at the bottom beside the Hartwell emblem, was a portrait. The man in the photo wore the same warm expression she had seen yesterday. The same gentle focus. The same neatly combed brown hair. Head of Heartwarming Fund, CEO Liam Hart. Her breath left her in a sharp, stunned exhale. CEO Liam, the man who picked up her book. The man who crouched down to speak to Aiden. The man who had listened, really listened to her talk about 2 jobs, missed school calls, the possibility of losing her home. She remembered the flicker in his eyes when he saw the tear in Aiden's backpack. A flicker she now understood was not pity, but recognition. And suddenly the dots connected in a way that made her stomach drop. She had spoken freely, unaware. She had let him into parts of her life she rarely revealed, thinking he was simply another quiet library visitor. A warmth rose through her cheeks, embarrassment, fear, confusion swirling in one tight knot. Someone like him lived in an entirely different world. Not just comfortable, powerful, influential, and she had talked to him like he was ordinary. Ella stepped back from the poster, her pulse stumbling. She didn't know what he wanted. She didn't know what he thought. But the safest thing, the only thing she could think to do, was to put distance between them. She squeezed Aiden's hand. "Let's go, sweetie." The rain swallowed them as they stepped outside, and Ella made a quiet promise to herself beneath the cold, drumming sky. Tomorrow she would avoid him, no matter what. The next few days slipped into a rhythm Ella hadn't felt in months. Tight, rushed, brittle. After seeing the poster and discovering Liam's real identity, she made a single decision that shaped the entire week: avoid him at all costs. She canceled the reading circle at the library, telling the staff she needed time to handle extra shifts. She kept her head down at work, declined every moment of rest, and picked up an additional night cleaning job even though her legs already trembled by the end of each shift. Anything to stay busy. Anything to stay invisible. Anything to make sure she didn't have to face the embarrassment of having opened her heart to someone so far above her world. Aiden didn't understand. On Tuesday, he tugged at her sleeve with wide, confused eyes. "Mom, aren't we going to the library?" "Not today, sweetheart," she murmured. Maybe later this week, but later kept moving farther away. The exhaustion she hid behind forced smiles grew heavier, and Aiden's shoulders sank a little more each evening as he sat alone at the small kitchen table, drawing pictures of foxes and birds, waiting for a reading hour that never came. Still, Ella pushed forward. She didn't have the luxury to pause, not when rent was looming, not when life felt like a constant cliff edge. On Thursday morning, while scrubbing out a break room sink at her day job, her phone rang. The screen showed the school's number. Her stomach tightened. Calls during school hours were never good. She answered with wet hands and a voice that already trembled. "Ms. Morris?" the nurse said urgently. "Aiden fainted during class. He's awake, but he seems very weak. You should come right away." Everything inside Ella dropped. The world narrowed to a single pulsing sound, her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She ran. She didn't even clock out. She didn't grab her bag. She simply bolted out the door and sprinted across the wet pavement, lungs burning as she fumbled for her bus pass with shaking fingers. 20 minutes felt like an hour. When she finally burst into the school, the hallways blurred around her. She half stumbled, half ran into the health office, and froze at the doorway. Aiden lay curled on the cot, pale, small, his eyelids heavy. "Mom?" he whispered when he saw her. Ella fell to her knees beside him, pulling him into her arms. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she cupped the back of his head, kissing his damp forehead over and over. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." He leaned into her weakly. "I'm just tired." The nurse explained that Aiden had been experiencing headaches all week, likely due to stress and severe lack of sleep. Ella listened, guilt shredding through her. She had been so consumed with hiding, working, running, that she hadn't noticed how tightly her little boy had been holding himself together. She carried him to the car of a colleague who offered to drive them, and soon they were at Willow Creek General Hospital, where fluorescent lights buzzed harshly above the check-in desk. A doctor ordered tests, blood work, neurological screening, additional evaluations to rule out anything serious. Then came the estimate, far beyond what Ella had saved. Her throat tightened. She stepped into the hallway so Aiden wouldn't hear. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying not to fall apart right there on the sterile tile floor. And that was when a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Ella?" She stiffened. Slowly she turned. Liam Hart stood at the far end of the corridor, rain still clinging to his coat shoulders, as though he had arrived in a hurry. His expression wasn't polished or distant, like she imagined a CEO's would be. It was strained, worried, human. Why are you here?" Ella whispered, her embarrassment flaring hot through her chest. "To see if Aiden's okay." He stepped closer, his voice low. "A friend's daughter went through something similar last year, stress-related fainting from anxiety and overwork. When I heard what happened at the school..." He paused, choosing his words with care. I thought maybe you could use someone who's been through this before. Ella swallowed, torn between fear, pride, and the overwhelming pressure of the day. I don't need to be someone you feel sorry for. This isn't pity, he said softly. It's concern. His sincerity, quiet, steady, unforced, broke something in her. The tension she'd been holding for days finally snapped, and her shoulders collapsed under the weight of everything she'd been carrying alone. Tears she'd fought back since morning filled her eyes, blurring the sterile hallway into streaks of light. She covered her face with her hands, choking on a sob she could no longer hold. Liam didn't move closer, didn't touch her. He simply stayed, anchoring the moment with silence, giving her space to break without judgment. And for the first time in days, Ella let herself cry. A nurse led Ella and Liam to a small consultation room beside the pediatric wing, a quiet space with muted walls and a single lamp casting soft gold across the chairs. Ella sat on the edge of one, her hands still trembling, her mind running in frantic circles. Liam stayed near the door, giving her space while watching her with a steadiness she wasn't used to. The storm inside her chest slowly settled, leaving exhaustion in its wake. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The muffled hum of the hospital moved around them like a distant tide footsteps. Intercom announcements, wheels rolling across polished floors. Then Liam exhaled, as if deciding something. He walked closer, slow enough that Ella had time to pull herself together if she wanted to. She didn't. She was too tired. Ella, he said quietly, I think I owe you the truth. She looked up. His expression was different now, unguarded, almost vulnerable. About why I was at the library, he continued. It wasn't for research. Not exactly. He sat across from her, his elbows on his knees, fingers intertwined tightly. When I was a kid, he began, voice low, my mom used to take me to a public library that looked almost exactly like Willow Creek. Same high windows. Same carpet with those little swirls. She worked 3 jobs, but every Friday, no matter how tired she was, she'd sit with me and read until the place closed. His voice wavered, just slightly. Ella saw his hands tightening until his knuckles went pale. Those nights, he said, were the only time life felt safe. He swallowed. When she died, I kept going back to the library on my own, just to sit there. Just to remember. Ella's breath hitched. The room felt smaller suddenly, quieter, as if the walls themselves were listening. Liam blinked hard. So when I heard your voice reading that Fox story, I stopped walking. It felt like something I hadn't felt in years. His gaze lifted to hers. Like kindness hadn't disappeared from the world after all. The words struck something soft and fragile inside her. She gripped the sleeve of her jacket, unsure what to say. Liam continued, softer now. Your voice made the room feel the way she used to, warm, real. And when you talked about your son and your life, he paused, searching for the right word. You weren't being dramatic. You were being honest. Ella looked down, her throat tightening. I thought, she whispered, you were only listening because you felt sorry for me. A faint ache flashed across Liam's features. Not anger, but hurt. He leaned forward. Ella, I didn't stay because you needed help. He shook his head. I stayed because I wanted to understand you. Because you reminded me of strength I'd forgotten people could have. Her eyes stung. But you're a CEO, she said quietly, as if the title itself built a wall she could never climb. Your world is nothing like mine. Maybe not, he replied gently. But hardship doesn't care about titles. Loss doesn't either. And kindness, real kindness, has nothing to do with status. His voice softened even further. I came to listen. Not to rescue, not to judge, not to fix your life, just to be there. The sincerity in his words pressed against every wall she had put up since childhood. For a long moment, Ella didn't speak. Her eyes drifted toward the door, toward the hallway where Aiden was being examined. Her worry surged again, pushing everything else aside. Liam followed her gaze. "We'll figure out what's going on," he said quietly. "Together, if you'll let me." She didn't answer, not because she didn't want help, but because the weight of the day had pressed her voice into silence. The door opened. The doctor stepped in, holding a clipboard. His expression was kind, but serious enough to make Ella's chest clench. "Ms. Morris," he said, "Aiden is stable, but he's showing clear signs of chronic stress and persistent sleep disruption. He'll need long-term psychological support and regular monitoring." The words hit her like a blow. Long-term support, programs, costs. Her knees felt weak. She grabbed the arm of the chair to steady herself, her breath shuddering. Liam's eyes widened with concern, but he didn't move toward her. She could feel he wanted to, but he held the boundary she might need. The doctor continued, explaining treatment plans, evaluations, referrals, each word twisting tighter around Ella's heart. When he left the room, closing the door gently behind him, the silence returned, heavy, crushing. Ella pressed both hands to her face, her voice cracking. "I can't afford this," she whispered. "I can't even keep up with rent. How am I supposed to?" Her sentence dissolved into broken air. And in that small hospital room, with the weight of the future pressing down on her, she felt the first edge of despair settle in her chest. The storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. Ella stayed beside Aiden's hospital bed long after the doctor left, long after the hallway lights dimmed into their late evening hush. Machines hummed in soft, rhythmic patterns around them. Aiden slept curled on his side, one hand tucked beneath his cheek, the other resting near Ella's arm. She sat there, unmoving, afraid that if she blinked too long, the weight of everything pressing on her chest would crush her completely. She thought of the treatment plan, the referrals, the long-term support he needed, costs she could never imagine covering. Pride, thin, brittle, stubborn, rose in her throat. She couldn't take help from someone like Liam, not without feeling small, not without feeling like a charity case. She leaned back in the chair, rubbing her face with both hands. "I can't accept anything," she whispered to herself. "Not from him." Then Aiden stirred, barely, just a tiny shift of his body as he turned his head on the pillow. His eyelashes fluttered and a small, shaky breath escaped him. His fingers reached out blindly in his sleep, searching for something familiar, something safe. And then softly, instinctively, his hand found hers. "Mom," he murmured, voice fragile as tissue. "I just want you to read to me every day." The words slipped straight into her heart like a blade wrapped in silk. Ella's eyes flooded instantly, blurring the white hospital room into light and shadow. The overhead lamp cast a pale glow across his face, making him look both impossibly young and impossibly brave. She bent over him, brushing her thumb gently across his forehead. "Oh, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Behind her, footsteps approached, quiet, respectful. She didn't have to look to know it was Liam. He paused a few feet away, letting the moment belong to her and her son. When she finally wiped her cheeks and turned, his expression held none of the polished confidence she once associated with CEOs. He looked human, worried, determined. "Ella," he said carefully, "Aiden can join the Heart Learning Fund support program. It's completely transparent, no strings. It's designed exactly for situations like this, working families under pressure." She shook her head immediately. "Liam, I can't." "You can," he said softly but firmly. "And you should. This isn't charity, it's a resource. One your son deserves. But it's your program. Your fund. It's a program for children," Liam corrected gently. "Not a favor. Not a handout. And not something you owe me for." She looked away, swallowing the fear that rose like a wave. "I don't want to feel less than." "You aren't," he said. "You're the strongest person I've met in years." The sincerity in his voice cracked something inside her, this time not from pain, but from the unfamiliar experience of being seen. Truly seen. Before she could respond, a nurse entered, reminding them visiting hours were ending. Liam stepped back, giving her privacy. She stayed with Aiden until he drifted into deeper sleep, then kissed his forehead and walked into the hallway with her tote bag clutched tight against her chest. Liam waited near the elevator. "There's something else," he said. "The library is hosting a reading event tomorrow. A fundraiser for families under financial stress." Ella blinked. "The library?" "Willow Creek," he nodded. "They wanted a community story hour. I may have helped arrange it." "Liam?" she whispered, overwhelmed. "It's not about you," he assured quickly. "It's for parents like you. And for kids like Aiden." She didn't know what made her agree. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe hope. Maybe the realization that hiding hadn't protected her or her son. It had nearly broken them both. The next evening, she stood at the library entrance, hands trembling as she clutched a picture book to her chest. The reading corner was transformed. Lantern-like lights glowed warmly from the ceiling. Parents gathered with their children, creating a soft circle around the empty storyteller's chair. Conversations hushed when they saw her. Ella's breath caught. She stepped forward. Slowly, her hands shook as she opened the book. The first words snagged in her throat. But then she looked at Aiden sitting cross-legged in the front row, eyes bright, cheeks still pale but safe. He gave her a tiny nod. So she began. Her voice trembled at first, then raw, but as she kept reading, something inside her steadied. The room warmed. Children leaned in. Adults listened. Her voice rose, fuller, stronger, as if remembering itself. Somewhere in the back of the room, half hidden by the shelves, Liam watched. Not interfering, not directing. Simply witnessing the moment she reclaimed a piece of herself she didn't know she had lost. When she turned the final page, the room stayed quiet, soft, reverent before applause swept gently through the circle. And for the first time in weeks, Ella felt something that hadn't touched her in a long time. Hope. Aiden's recovery was slow but steady. Within a week, the dark circles under his eyes softened, and his smile, small and cautious at first, began to return. The doctors adjusted his schedule. The Heart Learning Fund arranged counseling sessions and school support, and for the first time in months, Ella felt the constant knot inside her begin to loosen. Freeing Aiden from the weight he'd been carrying allowed her to breathe again. One morning, as she packed his things for school, she noticed his backpack sitting neatly on the chair. It looked different. The frayed seam was gone, replaced by careful stitching that blended so seamlessly she might have missed it if she weren't looking closely. Even the worn zipper had been replaced, smooth and functional. On the side pocket, tucked discreetly where a child might find it, but an adult might overlook it, was a small folded note. Ella opened it slowly. Every child deserves a safe place. No signature, no initials, nothing that drew attention. But she knew. Her chest tightened, not with embarrassment this time, but with something gentler. Something like recognition, gratitude, warmth spreading quietly through her ribs. Aiden peeked over her shoulder. "Mom, look, it's like new." She kissed the top of his head. "Yeah, baby," she whispered. "It really is." From then on, returning to the library didn't feel like a risk anymore. It felt like coming home. Every afternoon, when the sun slanted through the tall windows and painted golden stripes across the carpet, Ella and Aiden would walk into the reading corner, sometimes with books in hand, sometimes with nothing but tired smiles and the hope of a quiet hour. Liam often arrived a few minutes later, not dramatically, not with the air of someone important. He simply walked in, nodded a greeting, and sat nearby, never intruding, always present. The quiet kind of presence that made the room feel steadier somehow. Their conversations were slow at first, woven between page turns and whispered instructions to the children. They talked about books, about the smell of old paper, about childhood memories and how libraries seemed to hold all the gentle things people tried to protect. Liam never mentioned the company or the fund or his title, and Ella never treated him like someone who owned skyscrapers and signed checks with a flourish. Instead, they became something simpler. Two people who found peace in the same warm corner of the world. He listened to her thoughts about Aiden's progress, how the counseling sessions helped, how he slept better, how his drawings looked brighter now. She listened to him share small stories about his mother, about growing up in a tiny apartment above a laundromat, about how books filled the spaces where tenderness had been missing. There was no rush between them, no push toward romance or promises. Just the soft, accumulating familiarity of two lives brushing gently against each other. Some afternoons, Liam would help Aiden choose a book. Other days, Aiden would fall asleep halfway through the story, his legs draped across Ella's lap as she stroked his hair. It was on one of those evenings, quiet, warm, awash in amber light, that something shifted. The library lights dimmed just enough to let the sunset carry the room. Ella sat in the storyteller's chair, Aiden curled against her side, already dozing before she reached the second page. The fading sun poured through the windows, washing everything in soft gold, the bookshelves, the carpet, the edges of Ella's hair. Liam sat just a few feet away, one ankle resting over his knee, listening quietly. His expression was thoughtful, almost peaceful. At one point, he reached out to gently turn a page for her when she hesitated, his fingers brushing the corner of the illustration in a gesture so subtle it almost felt like part of the story itself. Ella looked up. Their eyes met. Not with intensity, not with declaration, but with an understanding born from everything they had walked through: pain, fear, hope, tenderness, and the shared truth that kindness once given didn't fade. It lingered. It took root. When she finished reading, Aiden slipped fully into sleep, his cheek pressed against her arm. The last rays of sunlight rested on all three of them like a blessing. And in that small, glowing corner of Willow Creek Library, Ella finally realized she no longer felt alone. If this story touched your heart, share it so more people can believe that kindness, even small, can change a life. If this story touched your heart, follow Midus Stories for more.